Welcome to the 5-Year You podcast, a show dedicated to helping you become the best version of yourself one day at a time. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Kat, and we promise to keep it raw, real, and relatable.
Are you ready to grow? Hey there, 5 Tribe. Today's episode is called Courage Over Comfort, and it's all about becoming that best version of yourself and forcing yourself to move through things when you really don't want to, because all of our growth takes place outside of our comfort zone. How are you doing today, Kat?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really good. It's been a really good week, and I'm really excited about this topic. You know, I love a good short topic, and this just kind of sums it up. I mean, I'm like, can we abbreviate it to COC? I'm like, no, we probably can't do that. But let's just call it Courage Over Comfort and be happy we have our limits. So what's the first thing that comes to mind to you when we talk about something like having courage to get out of your comfort zone?
I think about all of the different things we've learned about how our brains have evolved over time, and that our brains are wired to help us survive, right? And
Yes.
I remember learning about this years and years ago, and it was revolutionary at the time. And the idea is that our world has evolved far faster than we have as humans. So we still have the same lizard brain that our ancestors, our caveman ancestors had, and it's wired to keep people alive, to keep the population growing, right? And because of that, sometimes when we want to jump into something unfamiliar or try something new, our brain screams, no, 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 no. Because if we were caveman, it could mean like, don't do anything new, don't break apart from the pack. These are built-in survival strategies baked into our DNA. And so I instantly think of that, like fear. The fear is there on purpose. That doesn't mean we have to listen to it.
Right. And there's a lot of good books on moving beyond fear. But I think in the world that we're in right now, like change is just so prevalent. It's going over and over and over and over. And we never know what the news of the world's going to look like that day. So it's important to know that our brain has evolved, and that, like you said, our caveman brain or our leopard, third reptilian brain. That's how it works, right? The lizard gets eaten by the cat, the human eats the cat, and that's how your brains are formed.
Nobody's eating cats.
No, it's science, folks. Don't look it up. Anyway, but I think like it's important to realize that we have these parts of our brains and they serve a really big purpose. But at the same time, we strive to be comfortable, right? That's why we get houses. That's why we have, we're not living in caves with small fires anymore. We have evolved to be comfortable, but we always have to be growing, I believe. I think that's where the excitement happens. I think that's the whole point of life, is that you need to always be growing. And to do that, it requires courage to move beyond your comfort zone. And it doesn't have to be like this exceptionally large thing every time. It's just kind of pushing the boundary a little bit. Kind of like, I'll use the example for me. When my daughter and I went to Chicago, we went up to the top of the Willis Tower, which used to be the Sears Tower, for those of you that, grew up in the 80s like I did and didn't know it changed names. And we get to the top. Now, I am like way afraid of heights. And, there's those ones where you can there's the glass ledge where you can you're indoors, but you can walk out over the edge and do it. And I'm like, I ain't doing that. And so
I'm thinking hard pass.
I am looking at the thousands of people that have done this. I'm like, but what happens if all those millions of people that have gone on this glass thing have all loosened it just for this second for me to step on it, and I'm going to plummet to my death? Because clearly that's what the people at the Willis Tower would love to see, is that happening.
Right.
But I edged out. I kind of okay, this is way out of my comfort zone. I'm going to edge a little bit. And I got a little closer, much to the girl taking our pictures. Massive amusement as I edged out. And I actually managed to get over the edge and look down. New underwear was bought afterwards, but that's just too much to know. And it was just I had to edge there. It wasn't like I'm going to break through this and so be it. You edge past your comfort zone, and then suddenly you can see where you are and you're like, wow, I have changed. And it's not always so drastic, but it is a process that you are constantly having this internal battle of your ego that's going, stay safe, stay safe. We're not staying safe right now, but you have to just kind of nurse it along. And as
Yeah,
you go,
for
like,
sure.
no, this is a good photo op. We're going to do it for the photo op right now.
Yeah, I think some days it feels like courage just to be alive and an adult, you know? It's like some days it feels remarkable just to like do the basic things that you're supposed to do. Some days you read the news and you're just like so demoralized and you're just like, wow, it's just courage just to put one foot in front of the other sometimes. And then other days, like, you know, you're saying you're on vacation, you're up high, you're doing something fun, you're doing a zip line, or whatever it is, you decide to move across the country. You know, all these things take courage. So don't feel like you have to take massive leaps in order to have courage over comfort. Sometimes the courage is built just on the day-to-day adulting, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think we've all had days where, you know, getting out of bed is pretty
That's
courageous.
the courage for the day.
That's the courage, and that's everything it took, and that is totally okay. So when we're talking about this, dear listener, I want you to just draw on previous experiences where you've had courage. I think that's the thing. I think sometimes we're like, I can't do that. I could never do this thing. But the reality is you have been courageous your whole life because you went to grade school, middle school, and high school. And, you know, bless you for you made it through all those things.
Yeah.
But I think part of our brain will tell us like, oh, if this thing happens, you're going to die and you're never going to happen. But your brain's always going to do that. But you have been courageous through all of that. You have acted in spite of that fear over and over again. You are way more courageous than you give yourselves credit for. So what are some of the things that you do to summon up courage inside of yourself, Kat?
Yeah, actually, it's funny you say the school thing. I was just thinking about how our twins are starting middle school and changing schools in the fall and things like that. And that makes my heart rate increase. Like, I wouldn't want to go into a middle school where, you know, 3 elementary schools are combining and there's all these new kids and it's a new place. I mean, that makes my heart go pitter patter and not in the, you know, I heart emoji way. Like, I mean, that gives me anxiety just thinking about it. So, the way to summon courage, I think, is again in the small day-to-day moments. It's just trying something new. I think as adults, it's really hard for us to be the beginner at something again. By the time you get to your 30s, midlife, as they say, you kind of have been, you know, working at your gig for 15, 20 years, right? You sort of have a pattern and a path and you live in your place. And I think that courage is built by trying to add to your life, trying to add new experiences, give sparks. Some people find that through traveling. Some people find it through going back to school. Some people find it through, you know, like I said, moving to a completely different place. But for me, all of the times that have taken courage, I think about kind of restarting my life. I remember needing a lot of courage when I found out I was pregnant with twins and had like no idea what I was doing. And I was 26 years old when I have them, which blows my mind when I think about now, like that level of responsibility at that age. And yeah, I think it's just built every day, right? The day I had the twins, I had no idea what I was doing, but slowly over time, you figure it out. You learn you learn their things, you learn from other parents. And now I feel like, you know, a decent mom to those kids. You know, I'm not, everyone feels like they could do better, right? But it took courage to learn how to do that.
And I think that's you make a really good point with that, is that you can incorporate courage to be a habit in your life. And that is really it, is making sure that you are not becoming complacent with all the things that you do. A routine is necessary. It keeps us in survival mode, but it's also okay to try a different type of milk when you get, you know, your latte, or like a different topping or something else. these aren't, they sound silly. It's like, oh, I'm so brave. I tried nut milk today. And it's like, almond milk is just blowing my mind. But to some people, that's a big leap,
Right.
because that's just something that they've never considered. And I think we kind of block ourselves in that zone to be like, oh yeah, you're so brave. You had almond milk instead of regular milk. But that can be a big change for somebody who's never tried anything new. And our minds kind of, again, always want to keep us in that safe zone.
Mode.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good point, because when people hear the word courage, it's great. Like, sit down, write down what you think of. And for a lot of people, that might mean like, saving 3 kids from a burning building. And I think when we think of courage, we think of these big, heroic acts, and they certainly fall into that category. But sometimes just getting outside of the norm is courage. It is practicing for those things. And I think it's good for our brains to try that every now and then. There's a fear of complacency, and complacency is different from contentment. Complacency means like you've just kind of gotten used to your life. You don't have a lot of appreciation for it. And contentment is that you feel joy within your life and you're grateful for what you have, but you also are open to growing and learning new things. And there's a lot of struggle with anxiety and depression in the world today. It is an epidemic. And I think that having courage and trying new things and getting outside the box is one way to counteract some of those lesser loved feelings that we have.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you can start to do little courageous things every day, just to expand the mold, not break the mold, but just expand it and give yourself, I love the contentment analogy of just like, you like things. And I think courage, there's the burning building thing. I think that's what we all think of Superman when we, the superhero kind of idea of like, I got to be this hugely courageous person. But we've talked about it. Courage comes in all sorts of things. It comes from saying no to things that you usually say yes to. It comes from putting yourself first when others are asking you to do things. It comes from a host of things. And I think when we feel like maybe we're not courageous, it's because we're not actually acknowledging the million times we have already been courageous in our lives and in our day-to-day living. Because every time you get in a car, you're being courageous.
That's true.
I think it was Tony Robbins that said, like, you don't think you're courageous, but here you are driving on this road. And really, that's the only thing that's separating you from oncoming traffic is a painted line on a road. It's like, it's ridiculous, but it's true. We just don't realize how courageous we are when it comes to these things. So give yourself some credit and acknowledge that, courage is prevalent in your life. You just probably aren't seeing it because you're so used to doing it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love the Tony Robbins example. And I think that's a good way to think about courage, is to acknowledge that you are courageous. Try to bring awareness to it. We always say awareness is the very first step for anything. And if you're wondering, well, why do I want to do that? Well, we coach people who want to better themselves. We coach people and we have them envision what they want their lives to look like 5 years from now. The self-improvement industry wouldn't be $1 million, probably $1 billion industry if millions and millions of people weren't searching for happiness or to find a way to feel better. And we're always looking for new tools in the toolbox, right? We always are looking for different ways to, and we, by Andrew and I mean, the two of us are always looking for different ways to, better our experience on this rock. And this is just another tool to put in the toolbox to add some excitement and spice to your life.
Yeah. And that's why we're here. We're here to experience the variety of life. And, I think one of the things I like to do when I am feeling a little less courageous is to kind of ask myself, why am I holding myself back? What is the fear? What is the fear here? And so if we use the example of going out over the ledge, which is an extreme example in my mind, but it's the one we have chosen for this episode, God help me. And, what's the fear? The fear is that I'm going to fall. Why is it there? It's there to keep me safe. It is like, this is like lump in my chest, throat. everywhere, fear. So I got to just kind of acknowledge that and go, okay, you're all right. You see that person that was just on there with you and that family of 10, you're going on with just one person. It's fine. And just, you kind of have to acknowledge that that fear part inside of you is like a little kid. It's a little scared kid that's going, I don't want to get hurt. I want to stay safe. So you look at it and you go, okay, we're going to go on this ledge. We're going to count to 10 and then we're going to go off. And that is literally what I did.
This thing.
And I think in the picture, I am literally, I can see in my eyes, I'm like, I'm at 9, take the picture. And then 10, I jumped off, but I did it. And I'm still here. And that's the point, is that it's when you keep doing these little things that show that you can do it, that you flex that courage muscle in ways that can be big or small, but it's developing that habit of resiliency that you're like, no, I got this. And when you're growing into that 5-year version of yourself, to that best version of yourself that we talk about so often, it's important because you're going to come up against obstacles and your mind is going to scream at you at different points to say, don't change. This is hard. Do not wear yellow. It is not your color. It's gonna just make up these little rules for you that maybe you had heard a long time ago and you've kept inside. But that's the idea, is that you're going to cross that river of change when you work with us. And we're here to help you along because we know there is a little child sitting on the other bank and it's not moving until we know that it's safe to move ahead. And that's why we work with people, is to kind of get over that fear of the worst what ifs, because it's actually the best what ifs, because you're moving towards something that excites you, something that you're wanting. We're just meant to stay safe, and that's all it is.
Yeah, I find that one thing I'm working on building courage and resilience is in the letting go of my children getting older. And I have not read the Anxious Generation book, but I saw another mom. She was doing one of the practices suggested in the book, and that was to let your kids like go into a place alone and like order food. So she let her 8-year-old go and order Chick-fil-A by themselves. And so she was like, heart palpitations in the car. And sometimes I'm really good about this, kids ordering on their own. I try to teach them skills. They each have a debit card they have for years. And there's other times when I will call Andrew in sheer panic and I'll say, I let, our son ride his bike to his friend's house. That's okay, right? And the location on the Apple Watch isn't working, but he probably got there, right? It's probably okay, right? And Andrew's like, yes, that town is super safe and he wasn't going far and, whatever. But I think that becoming a parent, and even if you're not a parent, if you have little ones, nieces, nephews, friends, kids that look up to you, it's good to practice courage on your own because, the kids are watching us and they're picking up their cues from us. And I would rather them, take the cool job in New York City at 25 rather than feeling like they have to live down the street, because I want them to have a lot of different experiences in this life, but they're never going to do that if mom doesn't let them ride their bike 2 blocks to their friend's house. Like everything in my body is screaming, no, like I want to ride behind him in a bike and drop him off. And I'm just like, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's hard.
It is hard. And yeah, I mean, those are the little muscle flexes that we have to do, right? Those are the reps we're putting in of trusting them to, that they're going to be okay. Very different from, growing up when we did, where there was no trackers or anything else. And, and often parents didn't really, as long as you had to be back home when the lights came on the street or, the sunset or whatever it was. And I haven't heard of the book Anxious Generation, but it does really kind of sum up how we are just dreading the worst all the time. And I think, not to be mean about the news, but I think a big part of this is to look at what we're feeding ourselves over and over again, because we are feeding ourselves anxiety on a bunch of different levels with the negative news, with the high sugar stuff that we eat that kind of gets us more amped up, the caffeine and all these things. I'm not saying to stop any of these things. I'm just saying be aware that they might be amping you up beyond a level that feels good. And I know that was both of our cases as we started to refine our diet. So, if you're feeling constantly like you're having to fight a tiger in your data, and there's probably some things that you need to reflect on and maybe learn some self-soothing techniques. The Secret Language of the Body is something I've been reading, which has been really, really good because, my body doesn't differentiate between anxious and excited. And it's like the reaction's the same. And mentally, your brain fires the same way with that. So just knowing that you might be amping yourself up, and you may have been doing this your whole life unexpectedly just by the society that we live in, because it is a really kind of get up and go society, which is why we preach to people, what is the lifestyle that you want? Do you actually enjoy the go, go, go? Or are you kind of looking for more balance? Most people are actually looking for more balance. They just don't know how to identify that. And having that courage to slow down is almost harder because you're fighting your body's normal operating system of go, go, go. And you're like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and be bored. That is hard these days. It's hard not to pick up your phone and occupy your mind. It's hard to just sit. At least that's been my experience.
I think there's always going to be courage for anything that you do that's outside the norm. And again, this goes back to our lizard brain. Would you say our leopard brain? Lions, but
it's our limbic. I think it's called the limbic brain system.
Yeah.
Bad me. Bad.
But again, the whole point of our survival and the early part of our human species relied on community. It relied on sameness, because anything that made you stand out in any species, anything that makes you stand out, you're more prone to attack. And again, our bodies are wired for survival. And so now, anybody or anything you want to do that's outside of the norm, like right now I'm renting, even though I've owned 2 houses and sold 2 houses. Right now I'm renting. That's very like, oh, is that a simple thing? Like, is she okay? Is she doing okay? And we talk about all these different things. We often discuss going outside of society's check boxes. And sometimes that takes courage to stand up and say, look, I'm not doing things like everyone else did them. Yeah.
It's one of the most courageous acts you will do is to live a life that is uniquely yours. That is a quote from somewhere, but I'm not going to be able to cite where it is. Let's assign that one to Oprah this time. Why not? There you go, Oprah. Thanks. But it's true, right? It's to look at your life and go, I want to live a life that is happy, and to have the courage to do that, to me, is the most courageous thing you're going to do in life, because we are in a programmed society to live a certain way, to be a certain way, to act, look, think, do a certain way. And when you get out of that, when you kind of realize you might not be in the right arena and you have to go somewhere, you have to go create your own game somewhere else, that's hard. And that's why we're here. We're here to help you with that courage to kind of go, no, I hate cutting grass. I hate having to do all these things in a home. If that's your, in your case,
whatever.
Kat.
Yeah. Small example.
Yeah. But like to be able to say that, I'm like, I think I don't need to own something right now. It just doesn't call to me, and be okay with that. That's the power of being able to break out of your paradigm and move towards something that is much better for you in the long run. But just know you're going to have that little bit of resistance in the beginning, because, you want to stay safe. You want to stay comfortable.
So the overall message here, everyone listening, is courage over comfort. If you feel like you're kind of spinning your wheels, you feel like life is repetitive, if you wish that you were happier and you had more things to look forward to, take some examples from your life and find different small ways that you've been courageous, and take some steps to learn some new things, do things you would have never considered before. And you'll see as your life changes. And I think that that's a good lesson to end with.
I think so. I think it's great. So that moves us on to our glimmers, which are, if you're new to the show, it's this little slice of happiness that we've had this past week. Catherine, what is your glimmer?
I'm like, I don't know if it's happy or sad, but the twins did have their birthday over the weekend, and I was very emotional about this. Like, I cried more leading up to it. I was just like, they were just so little. Like, I was such a mom about the whole thing. And it was just so beautiful. And I was just overwhelmed with love for them. I took them out to get some donuts for breakfast, and the weather was finally a little bit warmer here in Chicago. Took them to a park to play. And it was just watching how they were sort of outgrowing the park playscape a little bit, and how they were just kind of big for everything. And I don't know. I feel like they're on that cusp between kid and teenager, right? And I had a lot of feelings about it, but it was glimmery because it's just so beautiful all at the same time.
I'm going to echo that with my own kids. My glimmer is just that joy and sadness that kind of comes from watching them grow up and being like, every moment passes, and sometimes, like you're in that young stage of parenting when they're in diapers and stuff, you think it's never going to end and you got low sleep. And then you blink and they're getting out of high school, and it just brings a tear to your eye because you kind of want all the good stuff over a second time. And that's the cool thing. And, it's really is a privilege to get to watch kids grow up. And I think sometimes we forget that in the moments that are hard. But yeah, I'm really grateful for you getting to have that. And I'm very grateful that I've gotten to spend as much time as I have with my kids over the last couple decades, because they're amazing and I'm grateful for them.
No, that's so sweet. I think that's a beautiful spot to end for today.
All right, folks. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure to, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Hey guys, quick disclaimer. We're podcasters on the internet. If you need to seek professional help, please go see your healthcare professional.